Welcome to Critical UI, a show that wants to take a critical look at popular tools and offer critiques on their design and usability, with a focus on building up instead of tearing down. Today with me, we have Alejandro.
Alejandro, I'm a product designer with 3 years of experience. And we have Fede as well.
Hello, I'm Federico. I'm software engineer and been building software for many, many years.
And I'm Lino, lead product designer with over 15 years experience working on several aspects of design. So on today's topic, we have the question of, is Loop a Notion killer? And Loop is a new tool from Microsoft that not many are currently aware of. It's actually something that snuck up on many of us that we just had available when we had a Microsoft 365 subscription, and we discovered, hey, what's this new tool? Started to look into it, and we discovered that, hey, this thing looks a lot like Notion, like Confluence, like so many other knowledge-based tools. And so we wanted to take a deeper look into the differences between these apps, because some people still ask the question, is Notion still king? And now there's a lot of people vying for that crown. And so we wanted to take a look at what each of the apps do and also offer some suggestions and ideas on improvement. And we're going to be taking a look at this from the lens of work and productivity, not so much for personal productivity, but inside of the context of a business, a company, which is where a lot of us find ourselves, because there's a lot you can do with personal accounts, but once it becomes a business thing, then the stakes change, because you have a lot of interdependencies, a lot of issues with permissions, with different people collaborating, etc. So it really changes the focus from, this app works for me personally, I like it for my notes, versus now I need to work with all these other people, right? So we'd like to start off with looking at Notion, and we're going to start with our expert in Notion, Alejandro.
Let me just talk about what I like most about Notion. And we'll start with the UI because I really do feel that Notion offers a really unique UI style that allows users to customize their documents as much as possible. And it allows you to change font styles as well, which is a really nice touch. And I do feel that it has the most customization out of all of these applications, and it really does allow you to scan through documents without them being like um, too hard to scan. um Talking about code, they do give like these styles to different classes depending on the code language that you're using, and it also allows you to watch a lot of these a lot of your information with a lot of editable um, aspects, and so you can choose the color of the text, and you can also edit sorry you can also edit the background of the tables, and also on plain text. And what I do find that is a really high quality, a really top feature, is the sharing options that Notion offers, which allows you to publish your document as a website, so anyone can access it, and you can just publish it in that simple. And anyone with this link can access to this document and can see the latest version. So even if you edit here your document, um, you will be seeing this on here by just refreshing the site, and you will be able to see the live changes as well. I do feel that Notion offers a lot of simple UI aspects that allows users to navigate through the documents. Sorry, uh, navigate through the document much easier by dividing this by using this, and allowing you to navigate through it by using this nav bar. So I do feel that that Notion is really simple to use. It's really it's a really simple tool and allows you to use templates, which are really really easy to find and really easy to use as well. So you have your marketplace for templates, which are really diverse and allows you to generate new documents with unique styling and design um, for your company as well. So other than that, I do feel that Notion is really capable. It does suffer when it comes to large databases, but they are really focused on small and medium teams. So most of the times you won't have any issues with these kinds of documents. So yes, back to you, Lena.
It is very interesting to use Notion. In fact, we used to use Notion in our company as well. We ended up changing because of ecosystem changes. We ended up going from Notion to Confluence internally, which is what Feather will share with next. But one thing that I really liked about Notion, which I don't think was there originally, is the little shortcut on the right, which you mentioned of being able to jump between. At first, I thought it was a scroll bar, but it's actually showing you like the different headers, which is a nice way of letting you skip ahead, jump ahead. There's other not knowledge-based documents, or apps, sorry, things like Google Documents and even Word that they build a little table of contents on the side, which is also handy for the same reason, and you can jump around. Not every app does it. But I really like this quick shortcut, and it also kind of gives you an idea for how big is this document or not, because usually when a lot of headers means a lot of little lines means a much bigger document versus a small document with just a few bullet points, then you only see a few pieces, right? So there's always interesting ways that Notion gives you these shortcuts and just a quick way to jump around. I really like the way that it's formatted, the way that visually it looks. It was also something that thankfully Confluence has changed now in design. When we first changed, it was a little bit of a, this looks ugly compared to Notion kind of thing, but that's also the good thing about competition, is that it forces people to get better, right? So I really like the way that they've forced others to level up and match them in the way things look. So I really like the way this is styled, and I also really like the way that they do the code snippets, like you mentioned. That's also really, really nice how they do nice formatting. The only thing which I believe is not specified here, which in general is something that I notice. This could be a whole topic onto itself, but the theme that's used for coding is always a method, a topic of contention. Even the font that's used. There's a lot of people that they fight to the death of like, this should be this kind of font, it should be this kind of thing, it should be this color scheme, etc. But I do like the way that it's labeled clearly. And Federico, I don't know. Speaking of like code snippets and such, when you see code snippets, do you really care about that kind of thing, like the theming, the way it's like, do you have really strong personal preference about that, or as long as you can tell it's the right kind of code, do you not really care when you're looking at a snippet like this?
So usually what the first thing I look on code snippet is clarity, that you can see that it's code, so you can clearly see it. Then the second thing that I want to have is a out of the text feature. So basically you have different themes depending on the syntax, so that way you can highlight what for JavaScript and HTML and Markdown or whatever, you have different styling for highlighting that allows you to see what's more important. So that's very something that it's very useful. The thing is, that's something that you don't want to think about, right? So it's either works like magic or it doesn't, right? So if you have to think about it, then that it becomes an issue, right? Or if you have too many options, then it could become an issue, right? So I've seen people implementing theming on the code. So basically, you could choose like 4 or 5 different themes on a piece of code, and that for me defeats the purpose, because the idea is you paste it and it's clear to understand, right? And then the other thing that I've been looking for recently on code is that you have monospaced text, so you can see everything is aligned. So that also has been something useful, right?
So let's jump into Confluence and if either of you would like to share that and give us your perspective. And also, we try to replicate the documents as best we could between all three. So hopefully you'll be able to compare as well of what you think of their code snippets as an example.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Confluence is a hit and miss. They have been improving a lot in the last few years, but the thing is, so what I like about Confluence is that you can have deterministic versions. So basically, every time you make a change, you can go here to the history and you can see the actual change, right? And then because of everybody was doing editing in real time, then that allow you to, if you go to edit a page here, I think this one. Now this I can edit it real time, and somebody else is going to edit it real time, and then we can just play with it, right? And then you keep this deterministic versioning by just click update, right? So for me as a software engineer, that I think that's great, but when non-technical users use this interface, they usually forget to press the update. So then this becomes a draft, right? So it is there, but it's not there, right? There you go, right? So now Lino published a new version, right? So if I go to the version history again, wait, go back here. If I go back to the history, then I can see the two changes, right? So for me, that's something positive, right? But you have to know that in order to do it, right? Otherwise, you kind of miss it, right? And because it tries to be a trick for all trades, then that's why I'm saying it's kind of hit and miss, because used to be more dedicated towards technical people, and then they have more advanced features for technical people, and now they went the Microsoft way, where they try to put interfaces in between to try to simplify the interface for the users, but then as an advanced user, that adds more steps for me, right? So I think that's the miss, right? But I understand where they're coming from, right? And they recently did a new refactor of the interface, a new version of the Confluence. So now you have to migrate the pages, so there's no backwards compatibility, right? So that became an issue, right? And so now you have to be aware of whether you're in the new version or the old version, and are you willing to migrate, right? Are you willing to spend a few extra minutes fixing the formatting or whatever, because now it's broken, right? So yeah, but again, it's part of their innovation process, I guess, right? But anyway, that's what I like about the Confluence, is that you can have a nested structure, right? And you can have order into that, right? You can have a single search where you can search for everything, so you have a single source of truth, right? And then I think that the styling is very clear to use, right? They have been adding more and more features. They used to have this feature where you could edit. I'm editing now, so you could put a curly bracket, and now you could add snippets. But now they remove that again. That's something that an advanced user would do. But now you have to go here, and you have to use the UI to add whatever, right? And then the other thing that I like is the integration that it has with Jira. So basically, you can have, and I think we have it here, Jira issues. So you can search some issues, and then with this, you can have this snippet updated real time, so you can have some progress on where the team is or the project is. So that's something nice, right? They used to have more support on Markdown and other formats. Now they kind of, again, because they're adding more users, non-technical users, they kind of revert into that. So now you have to work with the new version, right? So yeah.
I actually noticed, Federico, you mentioned Markdown. That's one of the things that we were trying to compare. That
Right.
Notion does have Markdown. Loop has Markdown, but I noticed that Confluence for some reason does not have Markdown right now in their list of
They
formats.
used
So
to.
that's a
They
little
used to
odd.
have it, yeah. but now they remove
and
it.
it's odd that they took that away. I'm like, why not leave it?
The issue with Markdown is that is by design has limited formatting by design, so that's good. But again, when you want to do better formatting, then that's a drawback, right? So if you support it, then you have to stay within what Markdown can allow you to do, right? So I think you have like 5 or 6 titles, right? Title sizes. So it's either that or you're out, right? So things like that can cause some issues, right?
Okay. One other quick question for you as with your experience with Markdown, and just for people that have no idea about what Fed is talking about, the versions. That's how long we've been using Confluence, because we used to have one version of Confluence, then we got this whole bunch of updates of like, now you have to update to the new version, which is what I was mentioning earlier, that Confluence was a lot more rudimentary. It was very basic and bare bones, and now they have a lot more of the same niceties of formatting, head editors, etc. But this is also something that, with time they changed, they improved, thankfully, but they had to break backwards compatibility, which is understandable. You either try to force things and keep it very limited, or you go like, we're going to have to break and make sure that it works a lot better going forward. But
right.
With that in mind, though, Fede, in general, is Confluence an app that you are happy working with, or in your case, are you searching for like, I would like something a little different, or is there something specific that you would like?
The other thing that I like about Confluence, which is something that that I am hesitant to lose, is the URLs. So when you're editing, you have a URL. So I can share this URL with you, which is how URLs were supposed to be: unique resource locator or unique resource identifier, right? So if I share this with you, this URL with either of you, you can edit with me, right? If I click update and I save the new version, right? Now the URL changed, but now this URL is going to be the same, right? Through the existence of this page. So again, the URL is clear, right? And when you go with project, this is on a personal space, but if you go to project, then the URL is more clear, because you can decide what you want to put on this section here, where you can say, marketing, and you can have we use MKT for marketing, right? And then pages, and then you have this ID, which is the ID of the page, and then this is the title of the page. So I think this structure is great, because if you change the title of the page, then of course this part of the URL is going to change, but even if you have the old version, you're going to be able to find it, because it's going to use the ID of the page for it, right? So for me, that's great. We were sharing a URL from Loop, and it's this big, huge URL that it's impossible to identify, right? So yeah, and that's one of the things that I like the most about Confluence, right? Other than the editing, which is great, right? And that's something that if we choose something like Loop, we might miss that specific feature, right?
Alejandro, is there anything else that you noted about Confluence, pro or con versus Notion?
I do feel that it's really hard to find templates. I do have it's really hard to see which template you're using. You're gonna be using, because just by hovering over the templates section, it does tell you which kind of template you're picking, but it doesn't show you a preview. So for non-technical users, I do feel that that's lacking. Uh, in my own experience, after using Confluence for 2 years, I didn't know that they had templates, so it wasn't like as in your face like on Notion, that the first one of the first things that they show you is use our templates. They invite you to use the templates, and since Confluence is more focused on technical users, I do feel that that's why they are there, but they are kind of hidden.
So one last thing that I wanted to add about Confluence specifically was, I noticed you were talking about the code snippets, and how they highlight things in a pretty basic way, but there is code syntax. I was noticing about this one that as I was editing the document, because Confluence, unlike Notion and Loop, both of them are just a live mode, basically, that when you're in the URL, you're editing live. There's no difference between publishing and viewing. Unless, for example, in Notion, you publish the page, or the same thing with Notion, like you send them a link to like a static version, but the edit experience is the same. Here there is a switch in mode, and I was noticing that as I was creating code, there was no syntax highlighting, and for a moment it actually made me think, like, is the code wrong? Because I'm not seeing any highlighting, so I was wondering, is it not working? Am I missing a piece of the code because it's not showing up? Do I need to add something to it so that it identifies it? Like, I wasn't sure what was happening, and it wasn't until I hit publish that then I noticed that the code, okay, now it starts to highlight correctly. Like, for example, here with YAML as well, there was no hinting until I publish it, and now I see, for example, in this case, green text. In the case of SQL, now I'm seeing this blue text. And as I was mentioning earlier, there is no markdown, so there's nothing there. So that's just something that I found a little odd in the actual editing experience. It would be nice if you could just do it live, which Notion and Loop do. So I'll move on to that one as well, but just wanted to mention that real quick. And I do appreciate the fact that even though it's a little strange for some people to get used to that mode switching between editing and publishing, like Federico mentioned, especially for a company, it's very nice to have those versions that you can actually have, like, this is version 1, this is version 2, and you can do a million edits within it, but you have clear versions of when they were published. So this is like, milestone 1, milestone 2, etc., and you can have better control and jump around and compare the versions versus other apps where you just get like a long list of, like, these changes happened at this time, and then these changes, and then these changes, but it could be I changed a word or I changed the whole document. There's no clarity on what was happening there. So that's definitely, from a company perspective, I do appreciate that a lot better. Estoy haciendo nada más una pausa para brincar ahorita el tema, perdón. Okay, so jumping into Loop, this is something that I was mentioning earlier with the version history. Like Federico was saying, in Confluence you have specific versions. Right now in Loop, keep in mind that this is like the lowest tier available for Loop. There are higher tiers, but I don't think this is implemented yet at all. Haven't found this in the documentation yet. But there is no way to name these versions or to create markers or anything to know what is happening. For example, in design tools that we use like Figma, it actually has a hybrid of, it keeps a history of changes, and it sort of does like an autosave every, I'm not sure if it's based on time or how it decides to start auto-generating these, but it just creates a history like you're seeing here, but then you have the option of creating specific things in the time. So you can say, version 1, edit to version 1 or version 1.2 or, whatever it is that you need. Here we don't have that option, which is, again, something that hopefully they add, because we have noticed that Loop has been evolving a lot. Just in the past 2 weeks, they went from a super basic version where we didn't have any nesting to now we have nesting, which is very nice, which is something that we do a lot with Confluence and with Notion. So just something that, Loop, if you're listening, we would like that to improve. But talking about workspaces, this is what I was talking about earlier, where you can have nested documents. This wasn't available before because workspaces you can only create one if you're on a higher tier. So that was something that at first we were like, oh man, that we wish we could do that anyway. And since you have personal workspaces, you can do that, and you can share this within your team. So this is nice. You can still work on this. The only problem is obviously you need to upgrade if you want to have a company-wide wiki of these are your resources if you want to find out about X, Y, and Z, etc. That's something that you still need to upgrade to. And we're not saying that's a bad thing. It's just something that, even if you have the basic tier, you do have access to Loop. And it does behave very much like Notion and Confluence, which is something that we like. And in this example, you can see, just like the other apps, you have a cover, you have an emoji, which shows up on the workspace to let you know where you're at. You can change the font color, so that's also something nice. So when you double click on the text, you get a few quick options, but here you can go inside and you could do the color, the background, or the text, that kind of thing. So a lot of the same things are there that are available. You also have commenting. You have tables look decent, and you can also very easily shuffle things around. You can even change the type of column, which is something nice. For example, if you put number, it'll actually start to automatically sum the whole column. So even though sadly there's no special formatting like money or other things, so that you can have the dollar sign, decimals, etc. At the very least, it's a very nice, simple way to have a table with numbers, and then it could just add you totals and that kind of thing. So you can still use it for things like money. It's just won't have the the right formatting, maybe they'll add this in the future. But for the time being, at least you do have a few nice options. The other thing that is very nice about Loop versus, we were just talking about Confluence, like I mentioned, you get code hinting and it's live. So as you're editing, like I said, there's no publish mode. So as you're doing this, it'll show you the correct hinting, and you can select the language that you have. And this is also nice that you can see, you can turn off line count if you want. I'm not sure if this is a pro feature or this is just something that they'll add in with certain languages, that you do have the option for preview. You can even do horizontal split. I'm not sure you want to be doing your coding in here, but at least you know that you have an option, and then a quick button to copy the whole code. So this is also something nice. And the other thing is, like, you have an option to jump to lines. So if you have a very long, bit of code, you can actually start to look around, and you can even use your arrow keys to begin highlighting certain pieces. So again, nice little add-ons. Not sure how much you would use it in depth, but the fact that it's there is a nice extra. The formatting, for example, with code, you can notice that these are like little inline snippets of code. They're not as clear as Notion, for example, that was formatting in them red. So this is something that you can only tell the difference because of the font that they're using, monospace. But, hopefully they can improve that in terms of styling. Same thing with the code hinting, the color contrast. Hopefully they address this with accessibility, but it's very hard to tell from far away, especially right now I'm in a very bright room. It's very hard to tell apart that this is a different color than this, because of how thin the font is and because of the color. There's not a lot of contrast. So hopefully this is, again, something that they continue to iterate on, because the more I've used Loop, the more I've actually come to like it as a quick alternative, and one that I don't have to pay any extra for. Here's another example with YAML. You can see it actually is doing a lot better with hinting than, for example, with Confluence, like we were showing earlier, where just the main part is colored and the text is just normal. And here you're actually seeing a lot more. So I do like the fact that code hinting can be improved. Hopefully they can work a little bit on the theming. And the other thing that I did want to note is Markdown, for example. This is a nice thing that Notion did not have. It does have Markdown, but it doesn't do it this way. And Confluence doesn't have Markdown at all. But in this case, there's a lot of people that use Markdown for creating blog posts, etc. And there's sometimes when you forget, bold, was it 1 asterisk or 2? Because depending on what app you're using, there's some apps that don't use Markdown. For example, if you've ever used a chat app, WhatsApp, you put asterisks around something and it makes it bold. But in the case of Markdown, you actually have to put double asterisks around the thing to make it bold. And if you put single, it becomes italic. So again, something that you might have to think about a little bit or remember. And the fact that this one immediately gives you the option. So for example, if I put something else again here in double, and it immediately does the highlight. So that's something that's very nice, because it reminds you of, like, yes, you're on the right track. Same thing with headers. Like Federico mentioned, you can go all the way up to 6, which would be an H6. And then if you try to go beyond that, then that's just not valid. So it turns out the hinting to let you know you went too far or that's wrong. The only thing that would be nice, but again, that might be too breaking, is if you could actually see like differences in sizes between H1 and H6. I know that's not standard for working inside of a code block, but for people that are trying to convert their visual style into something that's code based, that kind of hybrid would be an interesting way to innovate, because again, this isn't supposed to be Visual Studio Code or another app where you're actually working with code. This is probably more useful for designers and other people that are just trying to get the Markdown working correctly and previewing what they have without having to jump around and go through loops or install a whole separate editor. So that would be something that would be really nice. All in all, though, the way that Loop works, I do like the way that it's been copying a lot of the competition. Here's just some quick examples of other apps where something that we've liked for a while is the Microsoft emojis in general, that they use a lot in Teams, that they're animated, etc. Those are all very nice. They have a lot of they have personality, and we like the fact that a lot of them are animated. So for example, in most apps you put a laughy face and it's just a laughy face, but in Teams, for example, you put the laughy face and you can see the tears rolling down. It actually makes it we think a little more, a better experience in a sense, because it has a little more personality. So like something like a clap is not just an emoji that's just floating around. It's actually like, clappy hands, and the way they're animated is very nice. So this is something that we like, that they're using their own emojis when using this, not just the generic ones. Something else that we notice, sadly, there's no way to import or export. So for example, sending something from Confluence into Teams, into Loop, there's no quick way to send this over to just be like, oh yeah, import the thing from this other app. Hopefully they work on this because, like I said, it seems like this app is just constantly evolving by the fact that this sidebar wasn't there a few weeks ago. So hopefully they add that would help us a lot with migrating. The one nice thing though is that if you copy paste things, we have done tests where it does, for example, it turns our emojis from Confluence into the Microsoft emojis. If you're using an H1, it keeps it as an H1 or an H2. So that's pretty nice. The only thing that we notice is a little broken is when you have internal links, when you're linking between documents, obviously that's going to break. So that's going to need a little manual adjustment. But we do like where this is headed. We do like the way Loop is working. And hopefully it's something that they continue to iterate and polish because there's a lot to like. There's still a way to go. But for a lot of people that find themselves already within the Microsoft ecosystem, I think Loop is definitely a very worthy contender. Just obviously, maybe they should look a little bit closer at the competition and start to iterate a few more of those things because I do think that they do have the potential to become a very serious contender for all of these apps. Federico, I'm not sure if you have anything to add based on what you have seen already of Loop.
It looks interesting. I mean, I like the concept. I would like what when you were mentioning about going through each line of code. I would love for that to become a URL, so that we can reference to that, right? I don't think that's possible right now. And then yeah, like there's a concept in HTML pages called anchor, where basically you can have titles with anchors, and then you can, generate the URL for that specific anchor. So that's something that Confluence does really good, but I don't think that. Well, there you go. Copy page link to here. So Microsoft usually reinvents the wheel when they have to do that kind of stuff, and they just implement their own thing, right? So yeah. and then another thing that I've seen happening, something similar happened with SharePoint, is like there's so many things you can do, but then when you try to do something, it doesn't work as you want. So eventually we stop using it, right?
That is very true. And this is something that, mentioning on terms of improvements, they do have an option for generating a table of contents, but the styling still needs a little work. It's a little tight. It's not very nice. And it seems to not be using the Microsoft emojis, which is a little odd. So you notice, like, for example, this one for roles, if I click on it, it goes to the anchor, like you were mentioning, Federico. But here you can see the very big difference between the default emojis and the Microsoft emoji. So this is a little something that, again, that's why I can tell that this app is still in flux and there's still a lot of improvement to go, because I'm sure in the end there's not going to be any standard emojis like you're seeing here. Like they should all be branded like the Microsoft ones. Maybe they need I don't know if they need to optimize it for a smaller size, or they're just something that's just not linked right now, so they're just going down to the default, but something to improve. And like you said, maybe a quicker way to copy links would be nice, or to style these. And one thing that I forgot to mention real quick is retrospectives is something that we do a lot internally. And I did notice that this app actually has the option to generate automatically a template for retrospective. So this is something that you can actually work on, and you even have like votes. So there's a lot of apps that I know that have been going around to do retrospective. Sometimes you have to pay for them. Sometimes they work with small teams like Miro or FigJam and other things. If you have those tools, great. But again, there's a lot of people that don't. So Loop is another simple option where you could even do a retrospective here, a simple one, but you could do one. Alejandro, is there anything for or against that you would like to add for Loop?
No, that I will really appreciate like all of the visual elements that they add, and mostly on code snippets that they highlight the different kind of classes. For someone that's not as knowledgeable on this kind of code, it does help me that to kind of get what it's going on, and also mentioning what kind of code, what language they're using, really does help me out to understand better what's going on. And for someone that's not as knowledgeable regarding code, and most of the times on these kind of documents, people will not be as knowledgeable as if it was on Confluence, for example.
That is a good point. And again, that just goes to the basic usability concept of don't make me think, right? Because a lot of times you might be like, oh, you know the context, etc., but not always, or you forget, and always a hint is always better than no hint at all, right? So as you can see, there's a world of knowledge-based apps. We right now just focused on 3 because these are the ones that are on our mind right now, but we'd like to know which apps are on your mind, which ones do you like? There's a whole lot of other host of apps we can cover. Let us know which ones you enjoy or maybe you don't enjoy so much, because the focus on this is to take a critical eye, a critical look at all of these apps and see where they can improve, where it can do adjustments, and in general, just make the world a better place through better design. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like and subscribe to get our latest episodes, and let us know in the comments, which app do you use for business? Do you love it or hate it, and what about it? And let us know what we can improve. We'd like to thank Density Labs for making this show possible, and a big thanks to our panelists today, Alejandro and Federico, and thank you for watching. We'll continue keeping a critical eye on design, but always building up instead of tearing down. Thank you.